Namaskaram and hello again. Today I wanted to talk about a really good conversation I had over the weekend with a younger couple. This was up in Nashville, and just randomly met and had all these really deep discussions for like 3 hours or something like that. Uh, really good stuff. But at one point, the young lady asked what my thoughts were on loved ones that have passed on and like wanting them to, you know, talk to us, to communicate with us, or to come back. And what I said was, it's kind of a complicated answer, but as a Hindu, we believe in reincarnation, and you live many lifetimes, like millions usually of lifetimes, and you don't necessarily like want to hold on to somebody and like keep them earthbound, or in that previous life, or like as an in between their previous life and the next life, by holding on to them so much that you're desperately trying to communicate with them. And I said, yet at the same time, we do pray to our ancestors and our lost loved ones to guide us. And I don't know if I'll explain this accurately compared to maybe how like other Hindus see it, but so we do pray to our ancestors because we do carry like spiritual DNA, right? It's not just our physical DNA, but it's also the psychological and the spiritual DNA. And we also carry karma. So we have ancestral karma. Some people that really don't like that nowadays. I don't know what to tell you. That's a resiliency thing, I think. Like, it's just, there's been good karma that has been sown by your ancestors, and that's still maybe unfolding. So I've indicated this before in previous videos, but karma isn't just like what goes around comes around, like you get what you give. It's like in this negative connotation. It is positive, negative, everything in between. So whatever action you do, there's going to be a reaction. So there needs to be resolution. There are those elements of having ancestors where they are still kind of around, so to speak. But they might even be living in another life already, your ancestors or lost loved ones, or have lived many lifetimes, but they're still working through that karma. And because we're interconnected and we share this DNA, that it does, what's that phrase, the sins of our fathers, we still have to also work through it because it affects us because of that direct lineage. So it's this interconnected web, which gets very complicated. And I was trying to really simplify it for her on, from my point of view. But then just looking at it personally too, I found it really serendipitous that conversation took place because Michio, my Japanese mother, she passed away at the end of 2011, like 2 months before I finished my first master's degree in South Korea, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I made a post about that, not a video, but a post about it. And excuse me, so that was like one of the hardest times, like that first master's that I did. It was just difficult. It was in another country, a different language. I was working my butt off, and she was very sick with cancer, and she passed away. And I carried that guilt with me for a long time. The reason why I carried guilt is because, excuse me, years before she got sick, when I was living in Japan. So she was my host mom. But before that, I was friends with her daughter who had studied in Oregon, and that's how we met. And we just became friends, and then I came out to visit her and her family and took like a 2-week tour of Japan, and it just immediately felt like home to me. And she, Michio, who is this like 5 foot nothing little Japanese woman, just had this heart of gold, you know. And after 2 weeks of, you know, spending touring Japan, she sent her daughter to go get some Shinkansen or bullet train tickets, and she just like waited for her to go, and then she like tugs on my sleeve, and I look down at her. I'm not that tall, I'm 5'9", but still, it's like 5 foot nothing is, you know, pretty short. And I just look down at her, and she's just like, "You're my son." And I went to go live with her and her husband when I first studied in Japan. I lived in Japan 3 times. And for like 2.5, 3 years total. And the first time I studied at Waseda University. And I was we were awaiting my news of who my host family would be, and I was just hanging out with her for a couple weeks before school started, and she's just like, you know, why don't you just live with us? And by the end of that first year, she had told me that both her and her husband, my Japanese dad, had many conversations, and they believed that I was like their long lost son from a previous life. And they truly meant it, and I believe it. Because every time I would, you know, the plane would hit the tarmac in Japan, I'd feel like a sense of I'm home. And anyways, so during one of the times I was living in Japan, I told her that if her or any other family member got really sick, I would do whatever I could to try to make it back to Japan and be with the family. So shortly before I went to go live in South Korea, I found out that she was sick, really sick. And my girlfriend at the time, we had tried everything to get to Japan, but it was just hard. I think there was a lot of economic hardships in Japan and in America at that time. And we just couldn't find a way to like make it work where we could live in Tokyo, where they lived. So we started looking at other cities, and that was like not too many opportunities there. But then I was able to get this full ride scholarship to go get my master's done in South Korea. And so I thought to myself, well, it's a really generous scholarship because they give you a living stipend as well, and housing stipend. And so I was like, well, you know, it's only a short flight from between the two countries. I'll visit like once a month. And then that didn't happen. And because I think Seoul at the time was one of the most expensive cities to live in. And I was just always busy, but I made excuses. I think deep down I was really afraid to see her sick and to go, because I had seen that with my stepsister when I was younger, and that was hard because I hadn't seen her for a while. She was off getting all these alternative treatments and then came back and was just skin and bones, and I saw her a couple days before she passed. And her family thought that she was holding on to say goodbye to me because I represented, you know, on behalf of my brothers and my father, who she knew, and they weren't able to see her. So I think maybe deep down I was afraid to see her and to lose her, because when I lived with them, that was the first time I felt like semblance of what a healthy, united family unit looked like. and I was a part of it. You know, they like adopted me. And Michio was always adamant that I was her son. She wasn't just saying it to be nice and you know, to kiss my butt or anything. She truly meant it. We had a very, very strong connection. You know, to the point where she would berate me and scold me like when she felt I did something wrong, and I'd feel it. I'd feel that wrath. And then, you know, other times, like, she would give me something, or we would go do something together, something fun, crazy. And she would be like, don't tell the other family members. So, yeah. I think I was afraid to lose that. So after she passed, I saw her, I think a week before she passed away, and she was in the hospital. It was like, you know, hospice care. Like, there wasn't much to do except make her comfortable, and she was already a small, petite woman, and she was just skin and bone. She wasn't cognizant most of the time I was there, for like 2 weeks, until the very last day. And I remember she came to her senses, and she was like, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. She's like, I've always wanted you to live your life to the fullest. You didn't break any promises. That was hard. But I still felt like afterwards that I let her down. I wasn't true to my loyalty and my promise as a son. So for years afterwards, I carried immense guilt, and I would say even shame, which is very toxic. It's very unhealthy. But eventually I started to work through that, and I realized her time on this earth in that lifetime was such a blessing to so many people. She was an amazing individual, and I was very blessed, even though that it was so short, the time that I had with her, and that I felt like I was part of a healthy family unit. I was still blessed to have that, even if it was only a few years. And when I started to realize that, and became a Hindu, I wanted her to move on to the next life, or, you know, to like heaven, or a better world. You know, I just wanted her to move on, because let's face it, like, life has joy, and it has fun times, excitement, beautiful moments, but it's full of a lot of loss and despair and hardships and misery. You know, we forget that. I mean, a lot of the world still struggles or lives in miserable conditions. Even within the United States, people forget that. And it's not that just because they're miserable, we need to be miserable. That's not what I'm saying, but everybody has experienced loss and misery in their life. And those fun, exciting times are fleeting, right? So, and the other thing too is, like, we're all going to die. At some point, in some way, we're going to die. And I think people are really afraid of that. So they try to fill it up with good times, and, you know, not trying to be bogged down by the hardships of life. So why would I want to hold somebody back like that's trying to transition on into their journey, whether it's another life, or, you know, on this here on earth, or to a, you know, a certain heaven, heavenly abode? Like, why would I want that? I want them to go on. So I didn't talk really about all, my Japanese mom passing away stuff. But I did tell her, like, it is important to honor those that have come before you, your ancestors or lost loved ones, and even be sad sometimes, grieve their loss or your loss of them, and then try to snap yourself out and say, but I was blessed to have them in my life during that time, however long or short, and I wish them the best on their journey, right? And that goes back to the common theme that I've been talking about a lot, which is detachment, right? That attachment, even if it's not to somebody who's living or past, but attachment to this life, this mind, this body, the things that you have, the good times, certain substances, that will hold you back in your progression. Even if you don't believe in we live many lifetimes, it will hold you back from you stepping into your higher self, your authentic self. So it is important to learn how to enjoy everything, or despair in certain things in moderation, and then come to a point where you let it go, right? Because if you keep ruminating and perseverating over things that you want to hold on to or don't want to lose or that you have lost, and as the Aussies say, it's like flogging a dead horse. Don't say it. You know what I said. You know what I said. The majestic four-legged animal. Moving on. Flogging a dead horse. Okay? We don't want to do that with really anything in our lives. And it's hard. I mean, geez, we all struggle with that one way or another, or at some point. And as I always profess, I am not above that. Like I'm on this, my mighty horse, and I am, never struggled with that. Oh, I've struggled with letting certain people or things go. And that is I've held myself back by doing that, and held that person back, or that thing, whatever it is, for moving on in this cycle of life and existence. So I hope that helps some of you. And I don't want you to think that I'm just talking about loved ones, even though that discussion with the young couple was around that, praying to our ancestors or people that we've lost. Even though it was around that, this is a pervasive, common element with anything or anybody in our lives, is knowing when to let go of it and not be so attached, because that attachment is bondage. Even if you don't believe, you're not spiritual, or you don't believe in reincarnation, for in this life, this mind, this body of yours currently, it is a bondage. It will hold you back from really living your life to the fullest. And I get a kick out of people that think living your life to the fullest is going and exploring, all these countries, or doing this new fad, or going to this bar, or having this item, to wear, jewelry, clothing, cars, new phones, whatever. And it's like, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, those things are nice, don't get me wrong, but coming from somebody that has, spent like 8 years in Asia, in 2 countries, different times and in different ways, and has lived in several states in the US, traveled to other countries and whatnot too, It's like those things are great, don't get me wrong, and they've helped shape who I am, especially if you live abroad. Like being a tourist is, I don't know, yeah, good, good on you, but it's not going to be life changing because you're a tourist. You don't have to try to assimilate living there. So I always encourage people, especially young people, go live abroad. Doesn't matter where it is. Do it for at least 6 months, but hopefully a year. Do that. It will change you. It really will. And it will test you and help you find who you are. But those things are, while they do hold some influence in shaping who you are, those are things that you won't take with you to the grave. None of them. Your memories and the actions that you have done, the karma that you have sown, good, bad, whatever, cool, weird, doesn't matter, that's what you will take with you. And for those of you that are atheists and you don't believe that anything happens to our, like we don't have a soul and nothing happens to us after death, I mean, that's your prerogative, that's your choice. But still, wouldn't you want to be your most authentic self in this lifetime? Right? Yeah, go do those things, live life to the fullest, man, and go have fun, but do some soul searching. Oh, I'm sorry. Not that, if you don't believe in that. Do some authentic searching for who you are at the core, your foundation, right? But that's what I got. I think she was receptive to it, her and her husband. They, like I said, it was a great evening, good conversations. And I think it made her a little sad because I think she wants to see somebody or hear somebody's voice, but I think she understood. And they were a lot younger than me, and so I think they're still figuring things out, like we all are, and that's okay. But I always wish you guys the best in your journeys. Be authentically you. Take care.